there was a very cruel feminist who said once that George Bush reminds every woman of her first husband. I guess that means, you know, the one you sort of should marry, who has all the proper credentials, and he's kind of, instead of the one with the improper credentials that you really want to be with, maybe. But you know, I thought it was very funny. George Bush reminds every woman of her first husband. Then I started thinking about it, you know. So I called up my ex-wife. I said, do I remind you of George Bush in any way? She said, what are you talking about? So I felt much better, you know. Well, you know, we all have our moments of insecurity, you know. Now we have Milosevic, described as a new Hitler by Bill Clinton. Called him a new Hitler. Bill Clinton learns his lessons well. Listen to the New York Times. The New York Times did there's a couple of paragraphs of psychobiography they had on Milosevic. And I want to read it. The people who write for the New York Times are very brilliant. Ooh, they're so brilliant, the New York Times people. They must be because they think so themselves, you know. And so it must be true. So I want to read this brilliant passage from the New York Times. And they're from New York, don't forget. Hey, I'm from New York, but I'm really not brilliant. If I were, I'd be writing for the New York Times. Milosevic. As a youth, Mr. Milosevic was a pudgy loner. See, now, being a loner in the American political lexicon, this is obvious evidence of psychopathology, and you're an assassin, obviously, you know. Lee Harvey Oswald was a loner. He may have been a loner, he was no assassin. Timothy McVeigh, the kid who shot Ronald Reagan, what was his name? Hinkle, I forget. A loner. They all call a loner. Oh, they were loners. They all have friends and family, but they call a loner. He's a loner, that's for sure. Oh. But Milosevic, you know, was a very specially serious case because he was a pudgy loner. See, now, pudginess is un-American. I mean, I don't think so. I think pudginess isn't bad at all, but pudginess is un-American. Now, if Milosevic, though, if he was a lean loner, that would be bad too. So it's best not to be either pudgy or lean. Let me read this whole quote to you, take it from the top again. As a youth, Mr. Milosevic was a pudgy loner. That's 2 strikes, pudgy loner. Who shunned sports, strike 3. And wrote poetry, strike 4. Oh, mommy, strike 4. Does anyone need any further proof that here was a psychotic killer nerd? The Times goes on. Today, Milosevic is often described in Serbian profiles as reclusive and moody. His country's being bombed into the ground. He's moody. With few friends. Yeah, a lot of them are dead. Though in public appearances and interviews, he can be as effusive and happy as a door-to-door salesman. Fascinating. Isn't that fascinating? So we have an effusive, reclusive salesman type. Even the managing editor of Foreign Affairs, the most establishment of journals we have, the managing editor notes, quote, Milosevic, who rules an impoverished country that has not attacked its neighbors, is no Adolf Hitler. He is not even Saddam Hussein. And it's pretty bad when Foreign Affairs starts sounding good, you know? It really makes you realize where your own our media, they're not our media, where their media really are at. Well, some people argue, look, it's not a case of class or international interventionist issues. It's nationalism, these ancient ethnic enmities. That's what it really is all about. Well, that presumes that class and ethnicity are mutually exclusive and competitive forces. It's got to be either one or the other. Not at all. Ethnic enmity can be enlisted to serve class interests. The CIA tried to do that with the Hmong people in Vietnam, to divide. With the Mosquito Indians in Nicaragua and elsewhere. The CIA did that in Bosnia. Don't take my word for it that the CIA was in Bosnia. Check the headlines. Manchester London Guardian, November 17, 94. CIA agents training Bosnian army. The London Observer, November 20. America's secret Bosnia agenda. The European, November 25. How the CIA helps Bosnia fight back. Generally, ladies and gentlemen, when different national groups are living in a society where there's some measure of hope, security, and prosperity, they tend to get along. There may be ruffles and differences and turf scuffles and the like, but there's a lot of intermingling. There's even a lot of intermarriage, as was going on in Yugoslavia. And even in Croatia, where you could say the northwest part was overwhelmingly Croatian, the southeast part was Serbian. Even there were lots of Croatians living in the south, lots of Serbians in the north. Bosnia-Herzegovina was totally intermingled. That idea of partitioning Bosnia into these three parts was a totally artificial thing imposed. If you look, Michel Colon has a map of the ethnic distributions in Bosnia. Totally, I mean, they forcibly extract people block by block. They were so intermingled. When things are going okay, when things start going bad, when you've got sanctions, when you've got the loss of trade credits, when you've got 70% unemployment, when things are beginning to unravel and get desperate, that's when people begin to want to jump ship. And when you've got a U.S. national security state backing the most divisive, militant, fascistic national elements, with fascist organizations arising in Yugoslavia that hadn't been seen in 45 years, armed with guns and money and organization and hired thugs, and operating with a blatant assurance that they had the whole might of the U.S. to their backs. That's when the divisions come, and you got a U.S. government that is actually pushing for civil war. And that economic decline and all that activated it. And what was the outcome? The outcome is that in Croatia, you now have the Republic of Croatia with President Tudjman, a Nazi sympathizer, who wrote a book saying the Holocaust wasn't all that bad and most of it never really happened. Tudjman, whose flag is the checkered Ustasi flag, which was the Nazi collaborators in World War II, whose army salutes with a straight-arm Nazi salute. Today, Tudjman, who suppressed the more liberal Croatian groups that wanted conciliatory policies with the Serbs. Tudjman, who presided over the forced evacuation of 600,000 Serbs from Croatia between 91 and 95. I don't see the media or the White House giving much indignant play to that one. Tudjman, who lives in obscene wealth along with his cronies, while the people of Croatia now wallow in economic misery. In Croatia, it's 5 years in prison if you criticize the president. But I don't hear Clinton talking about the need to bomb Croatia back into democracy. Then there's Bosnia, where the U.S. has supported the Muslim fundamentalist Izetbegovic. Izetbegovic, who was with the Waffen-SA when he was younger in World War II. A Nazi, not a collaborator, not a sympathizer, but an active Nazi. And who today now is the president of Bosnia. And hailed as a democratic leader who wants to establish a religious Islamic republic in Bosnia, who suppressed more liberal Muslim leaders. Bosnia is now under IMF and NATO regency. It's not permitted to mobilize and develop its own internal resources. It's not allowed to extend credit or self-finance through an independent monetary system. Its state-owned assets, including energy, water, telecommunications, media, and transportation, are all being sold off to private corporate investors at garage sale prices. And the Serbian part of Bosnia, which just last year democratically elected a president who was against the free market reforms, was removed forcibly by NATO troops because he was thought to be because he was thought to be a hardliner, is the code word used there.